Hey, everybody. Wait a minute. I usually give myself this big intro, not like Hey Oh by Carson. I got to stick with the canned 30-second blah, blah, blah. Hey, everyone. The 1980s, neon nights, city lights. The only thing I regret about cocaine is that I didn't find it sooner. Half joking. Anyway, how you doing, everybody? The 80s to me was a great decade. I bounced in a couple of the major clubs in Manhattan, Shout, China Club, knew a lot of the '86 Mets, knew a couple of actresses because of the club. And in fact, the late, great Catherine O'Hara, knew her pretty well. In fact, she had just come off, I met her in '84. She had just come off SCTV and she won an Emmy for it. I remember she was telling me about it. And I used to take her to Great Papaya. And she got a script that she was really excited about. It was called Heartburn, that she was going to film with Jack Nicholson, and she was terrific. And haven't spoken to her in 35 years, obviously. Around 1990 was the last time I spoke to her. I ran into her at a restaurant in the Village, and she had married since then. When she did Beetlejuice, I think the producer or the director of Beetlejuice, she met and married. But she was terrific. I think she was born in Canada, I remember. So shout out to you, Katie. But the '80s was a time when we were young, we had momentum, we were winning, as John Cusack would say, in the great hot tub time machine, because it was true. You know, uh, the '80s, I don't know, talking about it, you shorten it to the '80s from the 1980s, but no disrespect there. You know, now, different world. There was free market and conservatism dominated that decade. Socioeconomic changes due to the advance in technology, and we moved away from planned economics at that point. Um, Deconstruction increased and helped develop the world. Multinational corporations, South Korea, Taiwan, China, Thailand, uh, and the United Kingdom even, and the U.S. moved closer to supply side economic policies, which you don't really see now. But it was great, great advances in genetic and digital technology, gene tagging experiments. By the end of the '80s, it was unbelievable. The global internet really took shape. I started in stock brokerage, and it was quite interesting. And we grew up in a turbulent time. If you looked elsewhere than the US, the Cold War, which really ended in '91, but it had gone on since '46 or 7. Um, you had the Soviet-Afghan war, the invasion of Grenada in '83. You had so much. Lebanon in '82 or '81, Tunisia and all this crap. And you had the guerrilla war at Tiananmen Square, protests in '89. I remember I was in Boston at a Boston-Toronto game when Tiananmen Square happened. Might have been May or something. And you had coups, military coups, Suriname, all that. It was crazy. Ronald Reagan was elected the president in '80. Uh, Hardline policy, uh, preventing communism. He should have been around during the McCarthy era. He would have been a star. He challenged the Iron Curtain, demanded them pretty much the Soviet Union dismantle the Berlin Wall. And, the war on drugs accelerated under Reagan. Uh, PATCO, a professional air traffic controllers organization, it opened up late 60s, declared a strike in 81, better work conditions, 32-hour work weeks, and all that. Reagan fired over 10,000 striking air controllers who had ignored his order to return to work. You had so much going on. Really, you had assassinations. Uh, William Tolbert, the president of Libya, Ronald Reagan was shot in Washington. James Brady, with a police officer, U.S. Secret Service agent, incredible. Pope John Paul. So in 2 years, you had two Johns shot. Uh, One made it. It's just incredible. From Avelio Javier, governor of Antigua, just incredible. And you had non-disasters that were not of anyone's planning or fault. Remember Delta uh, crashed in the Canary Islands. Uh, Air India was a big one. Pan Am in New Orleans. Just there was so much, and then to just go further. It was just such a chaotic decade. Bright colors, exuberance, uh, in excess, medicine and biology. First surrogate pregnancy in 1986 in Michigan. So you had so much. Economics really fostered electronics and computers. Arcade video games had been big since the late 70s. I remember in arcades. And by the early 80s, very big industry in the United States. A lot of low quality games. The rise of home computers it caused a tremendous crash in around 83. The video game market pretty much didn't exist. And then around 1986, it came back. You had, remember ColecoVision, Nintendo, Atari 7800, Mega Drive, which was known as Genesis in North America. It succeeded the Master System. And you had the personal computers, the IBM 5150, Commodore 64, remember that? VTech Laser was an 8-bit home computer. 1983, the Macintosh 128K was really big. You had the IBM Portable, Amiga 500, U.S. Robotics, Courier telephone system. I remember when I started really in stock brokerage, 1980, I used the Courier and Quotron machines at Merrill Lynch at 55 Water. And it was interesting. I had never seen anything like that. Walkman and boom boxes were invented in the late 70s. The head of Sony wanted the Walkman for his long travel in the air, wanted to hear his personal stuff. That's why he did it. Consumer VCRs, VHS won out over Betamax. Remember, Betamax was a little smaller. Around 1975, they came out. Well, I was surprised, but VCR won over. Musical instrument digital interface, MIDI, made it easier to integrate. Synthesizers, electronic instruments. I used to do that with my band in the studio. Drum machines for use in musical compositions, all that stuff. HD came out. High definition was very expensive back then. The Hayes microcomputer. You had all that stuff. And we were, I was in my 20s in that decade. So you had some money. You weren't a teen where you're begging your parents. And I was able to attach myself to a lot of those fun things. I had a multi-directional Walkman, not a Walkman, an Iowa. In the early 80s, Iowa was getting big. I had a multi-directional. I used to bring in when my band was practicing a little square microphone plugged in, and it multi-directional was great. Cassettes became very prevalent. 8 tracks had been gone since like 75. Astronauts in 81, the Space Shuttle Columbia. You had so much going on. I had a 300ZX in 1984. I bought new for $17,000. Paid it off, $280 a month. And I remember Chrysler and American Motors when they had bankruptcy in the 80s. General Motors continued as usual. but the automakers made a recovery. In '85, uh, auto sales in the US hit a new record. You had Hyundai in '86 became the first Korean automaker to enter the manufacturing uh, forum. Yugoslavian built Yugo was brought to the US. The car was so small and cheap. If you didn't drink coffee or eat pizza for 2 weeks, you could afford one if you were 16. But then again, your friends could pick it up and throw it over the side of the highway if they wanted. If they didn't even have to be that strong. It was probably 1,400 pounds, that car. But GM began suffering in the late '80s. European luxury cars were being bought instead of Cadillacs. The Saturn, remember the Saturn, the first new American make since the Edsel. That was the first new car. Goal of producing high quality import fighters, and it started in '90. The DeLorean, the brainchild of John DeLorean, who was a flamboyant GM exec. Gold-winged sports car began in Northern Ireland in '81, and he was arrested in '82 for a sting operation while trying to sell cocaine to save his company. He was acquitted in '84. I wonder how much that cost him, but it was too late for the DeLorean Motor Company. They closed down in '83, and they regained fame though in Back to the Future and the film trilogy a couple of years later. Big block engines ended. The CAF fuel mileage standards in '79, performance cars and all that, but it came about again and it reemerged in the '80s. So turbochargers were used to perform better performance out of small cars. Fuel injection became the carburetor application, and to overtake it by the late '80s. Front wheel drive also became dominant. But decline of European brands in America by the end of the decade changed everything. Renault, remember, Peugeot, they just ended. Alfa Romeo continued to the early '90s. Fiat stopped importing cars about '88. But economically, we all had money. You woke up, it seemed like the good fare, the tooth fairy, went to your pocket. You had some global recessions in the early '80s, and that affected really more developing the world than anything. But inflation peaked to 15% in 1980. It was rough. And fell to 1% in '86, only 6 years later. Then it rebounded to 4.5 by the end of the decade. Finland's economy grew exponentially, and that caused the recession of 1990 Finnish economy. It was called Noskasi, economic upswing. And it was interesting. I dealt with that when I first went to Merrill Lynch. We had so much going on. But did it derail us from our nightlife? No. The music world was crazy. It really was crazy. Oh, don't come in here and say stuff like that. Unless you were there, you don't know. Now, to be fair, I'm a Republican. It does seem a little odd how well he recovered. I admit it. But it also seemed odd that Harris thought there was no problem at the border. So you don't know. Emmanuel, yeah. Really, Danae? That's amazing. Yeah, homes around 1990. A home in Bayside was about 300,000. Now it's $1 million, $1.1 million. Things have changed, Danae. Things have changed. But music caused the nightlife to be, like I said, I bounced in clubs. in the 80s. China Club, Kit Kat Club, Heartbreak, Shout. I saw a lot of stars. Bruce Willis, I was there when he met Demi at China Club. And Demi was cool. I used to hang out with her at Shout. I remember when Demi got um, about last night, and the reason why she broke up from Emilio, she was getting drug tested every day, and this was her last shot. Emilio was very heavy into coke, and so was Demi, but that was her last shot. If she failed, she was going to get blackballed from Hollywood, and she broke up with Emilio because of that. And Bruce met her. So MTV in the 80s launched music videos, and it had a larger effect on the record industry. You know, pop artists, Duran Duran, Michael Jackson, George Michael, Whitney Houston, Prince, Cyndi Lauper, Madonna, Grace Jones. If anyone wants to have proof that there was an alien being living on Earth, well, just look at Grace Jones. I actually, well, it's another story for another day with Grace Jones, but they mastered the format and they helped make television a master's degree. I remember I started playing the drums when I was about 8 years of age. No shit. No, I was 9. At my Aunt Nancy's wedding, the band played Hey Jude, and they didn't know it was me on the drums, the crowd, until they looked over and someone said to my mother, "Oh my God, your son's on the drums." I was a good drummer. And I remember that was your master's degree watching VH1 or MTV. I never knew Build Me a Buttercup, which was the first song I ever learned. I didn't know that it was an African-American lead singer until around 1982 when the song came on and I happened to look at the video and said, "Oh, wait," thought it was a cover. You got a master's degree in music. You saw, unless you watched certain shows or you Dave Clark's Bandstand or Rolling Stone magazine or whatever, you didn't know what bands look like. Now you could actually put a face to the name of your favorite artist. You know, new wave fell from favor by then, and new romantic came in. New pop, synth pop genres developed. A lot of the British and American artists, popular phenomenon. And in fact, the early and mid 80s, music grew fragmented. Subgenres hit: house, goth, rap, metal. You had Gotham. You had sub genres within genres. Kind of like when you'd go to school and your teacher would put. I remember when I used to teach. Well, I teach now, but I don't do it anymore. You don't use a blackboard anymore. I would put the main point, then A, B, C, the sub points. Oh, that's what you had. Look, in 1983, Islands of the Stream crossed into the pop Billboard Top 100. It was #1. That's a country song. Duran Duran was the biggest band of the 80s, and they led the second British invasion, first being 1964 with the Beatles. And it was a level of fame similar to the Beatles. You know, their debut song, Planet Earth, was 81. Rio in 82 was their breakthrough album. Hungry Like the Wolf, Is There Something I Should Know, became #1 in UK and Canada, everywhere. And then they did A View to a Kill in 1985, and they attached themselves to the Bond franchise. And then you have moviegoers that saw them also. Notorious was #1 in Italy, Spain, Canada. Wild Boys, West Germany, South Africa, America. They went on to sell 100 million records, won Brit, Grammy, and MTV Awards. You had Michael Jackson, who gave Toto, Toto's band, most of them were on the Thriller album. They were the backing band. And then they came out with their own, with the Africa song. That 2 years was amazing for them. But, it was Leather Jacket, White Glove, Moonwalk was unbelievable. Thriller, one of the best-selling albums of all time. 87 Bad came out. It was pretty good. Not as good as Thriller, but it was good. The Bad tour grossed over $125 million, which would be probably about 400 now. Worldwide, it was the highest grossing total at that time of any solo artist during that decade. He won numerous awards. He was the face of the decade. Artist of the Decade, George Bush gave him Artist of the Decade, in fact. And he was arguably the biggest star during that time. He sold more than 1 billion records around the world. Prince, a lowercase um, Michael Jackson, was good, very, very talented. Prince, great guitarist. Madonna, Whitney Houston, um, drum machines, synth became a sound. In fact, George Harrison blasted that synth sound. He didn't like it. And then you had new synth pop musicians that were really in synth pop. You know, the synth pop was a genre. The Eurythmics, Pet Shop Boys, who I love the Pet Shop Boys, Spandau Ballet, Flock of Seagulls. You had Ultravox, Men Without Hats, Ice House, Tony Basil, OMD, Visage, Alpha, Aha, Martha and the Muffins, Talk Talk, Depeche Mode. Depeche Mode, Enjoy the Silence, one of the most perfectly crafted pop songs I've ever heard. You had Tears for Fears, pop rock, Trans Vision, Vamp, ska bands, Madness, The Specials. Madness, I loved. A song, Our House, great song. And you had your heavy metal with Def Leppard and Poison and Megadeth and Jovi and all that stuff. You had some of the 1970s artists, AC/DC and Heart, and Ozzy and them. They reached a new generation because of a lot of that. So the hip hop scene by the end of the 80s got some steam going with Public Enemy and Grandmaster Flash from the 70s. He wasn't, Fresh Prince and, Bismarcky and all that. But you had a lot of, even the country music scene, where Ricky Skaggs and John Frick, the Judds, Reba McEntire, Hank Williams Jr., Alabama. You had all these. Willie Nelson was chic to like a pothead. Oak Ridge Boys, Crystal Gale, Barbara Mandrell, Dolly Parton. You had everyone. The Statler Brothers were big, right? Techno dance really emerged in Detroit during the mid 80s, 87 probably, house music style. Electronic dance was very big in Chicago, was very big. The Latino and gay communities, African American, really got into that in New York and Detroit, eventually reached Europe, became infused in mainstream pop and music to this day. Punk rock bands, Black Flag, Minor Threat, Suicidal Tendencies, Minutemen, became really dominant. The decade started out with John Lennon getting assassinated, and he had the number one album, Double Fantasy, in November 80, which wouldn't have been number one. That was a posthumous thing. The album wasn't even doing great. And then, as soon as he died, it was a lot greater. Well, I thought it was a good album. Marvin Gaye was shot dead by his father in 1984. Ozzy Osbourne's guitarist got killed in 84 in a crash, or in 82, I'm not sure. Randy Rhoads. Karen Carpenter died in 83. You had some real Andy Gibbon, 88, and Metallica bassist Cliff Burton, and Harry Chapin in 81, Tim Hardin. You had, we dealt with a lot, and we dealt with AIDS. Now, with the U.S. alumni being Pink Floyd and REO and the album chart alumni, Springsteen, George Michael, Bobby Brown, you always expected a hit out of them once a year. Blondie, Kim Carnes, Olivia Newton-John, all that. Dion and Friends, Dionne Warwick, Elton John, Gladys Knight, Stevie Wonder, and the Bangles. I knew Susie Hoffs really well. She came up and played with us. Very nice girl. Big Beatle fan. She's from LA, and her brothers were Beatle fans. She was young. Susie must be 3 years older than me. She's about 67, I think. But she really good girl, nice girl. And then you had Belinda Carlisle and all these others that came around. But AIDS was prevalent. I remember my ex-fiance, her father was a surgeon. She is still a bestie and is a surgeon herself. And we joined the Walk of Life to spread AIDS awareness. Greatest thing, standing on Washington in Washington Heights at 2 a.m. with a van, was giving out literature and condoms. So needless to say, I never had to buy another condom. It was cool. It was worth the cold air and the hot chocolates. But it wasn't unlike it wasn't rare for you to either know someone with HIV, have heard of someone that was close to a friend of yours, or just, "Oh, that guy?" When I went to a Shout reunion, a Shout, there were the bouncers and the dancers. The dancers were gay, a lot of them. I think most of them. And, the bouncers who were macho, tried to be. And coming back to the reunion, I learned that a lot of people that I knew had passed of AIDS. Some of them were very nice people. The others I really didn't know much. A couple of them were nice, that I knew. But, we had to grow up. You faced death. It was the decade of causes. I know Bangladesh started it off with Harrison in '71, but, you had We Are the World, you had Live Aid in July of '85. You had all of that. So we really got our master's degree in life a little younger, probably. I know our parents probably worked at a younger age. I remember my grandfather, "Oh, you can't get to school, the buses aren't running." I used to walk 10 miles. My, you know, my shoes were cold. My shoes had holes. My feet were frozen. My grandmother, feet, who had feet? That kind of thing. By the time they finished the story, they were laying dead. You had to outdo each other until, okay, truce, because you have nothing else to do. Great movies in the early '80s. Mary Tyler Moore became a movie star. Ordinary People, Chariots of Fire, Gandhi, Terms of Endearment. Jack was involved in everything in the '80s. You want a hit? Call Jack. Out of Africa, Platoon. Meryl Streep really got her creds in the '80s as well. E.T., Return of the Jedi, Empire Strikes Back. It was the decade of the trilogies. Top Gun was a great movie. Indiana Jones, Temple of Doom, Back to the Future. Uh, Beverly Hills Cop, Fatal Attraction was like a couple of other movies, and Michael Douglas was a big star. So you had a lot going on. There was something. It was an automat for people, a buffet. One size didn't have to fit all. I always said that in the '80s, you could be a musician because you could be who you want to be. You could be Boy George. His opposite was Cyndi Lauper. You could be any Grace Jones. You could be anyone. Now they put everything in a pot, all the ingredients, stir it up, and out come Timberlake and Andrea Grande. And, there's a set formula now. Back then, there wasn't. You could do what you wanted. But Hollywood came back to uh, the new Hollywood era of the '70s. The era was a period of high concept. The blockbusters really came into the '80s, where you just had coming of age films, Class, Fast Times at Ridgemont High, Risky Business, Mannequin, right? Porky's, Valley Girl. John Hughes seemed to direct everything that was up for an award. Never won it because it was silly. 16 Candles, The Breakfast Club, Weird Science, right? Ferris Bueller's Day Off, one of the greatest movies I think ever recorded, made. Pretty in Pink, Some Kind of Wonderful. Team comedies, growing up, 17 to 22, and you had the Brat Pack, Michael Anthony Hall, Emilio, Jennifer, Jason Lee, who was good friends with Phoebe Cates, Andrew McCarthy, Rob Lowe, Sean Penn, Nick Cage. We had a lot of those. You had off the grid, non-coming of age in a different way. The Outsiders, Rumblefish, The Bad Boys. You had Mickey Rourke, who started to really make his way with Diner, Pope of Greenwich Village. I always said if Mickey Rourke died in 1985, he would have been our James Dean. That's what they were trying to push for with him. Great actor. The horror films in the '80s, the franchises, Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm, Halloween, Child's Play, Hellraiser, Poltergeist. We had excess with everything. Comedies, Caddyshack, Stir Crazy, Blues Brothers, right? Private Benjamin, 9 to 5, Trading Places, Jumper Jack Flash, 3 Men and a Baby, Harriet Henderson's. You had so much to choose. If you couldn't find something, you didn't need it. And those franchises for guys that like tough guys but wanted to be taken away. Indiana Jones, Die Hard, Lethal Weapon, Rambo, The Terminator, Aliens, Mad Max 2, Escape of New York, Red Dawn, Predator, RoboCop. You wanted Dirty Harry, you wanted to be a tough guy, Sudden Impact, Cobra, right? You wanted to be a rough guy, macho guy, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Bruce Willis, right? If you were a chick, Sigourney Weaver covered it for you. You had 5 more Bond films. Roger Moore continued for a few and then handed it over to Timothy Dalton at the end of the 80s. I think View to a Kill was in 85 was Roger's last one. And then Timothy Dalton, The Living Daylights and Silence, A License to Kill, like in 88 or 89, were 2 actually good movies. He did a good job. They wanted Pierce Brosnan originally, but they thought he was a little too young Brosnan coming off of Remington Steele. They waited till the 90s. I think 95, he might have done his first one in 96. Superheroes. You had Tim Burton's Batman, Christopher Reeve, Gene Hackman, Michael Keaton. You had all this. One size didn't have to fit all. It was kind of like the suit that you could put on and it adjusted to you. Television became tremendous. Dallas, Knots Landing, Dynasty, Falcon Crest, Neighbors. Larry Hagman, a star from the 60s, became an adult star. I mean, not adult, more than 30 years of age. Linda Gray, Patrick Duffy, Victoria Principal, John Forsythe. You had people that really owned the TV set. And I believe must-watch TV started then. Appointment TV, where you weren't going anything if Dallas was on, going anywhere. And then you had your sitcoms that were popular. The Wonder Years for kids that wanted to know what it was like to grow up. Married with Children, Growing Up in a Dysfunctional Family, Bosom Buddies, Family Ties, Newhart, Too Close for Comfort, The Cosby Show. In fact, Married with Children, they wanted to call themselves Not The Cosby Show, but it got shot down in legal. You had Alyssa Milano, Who's the Boss, The Golden Girls, first comedy ever to have 4 older women designing women, star Dixie Carter, Annie Potts, Delta Burke. You had so much to choose from. Legal dramas, Matlock. Andy Griffith as Matlock. He was amazing. Nancy Stafford, cop shows, Dempsey and Makepeace, Miami Vice, Cagney and Lacey, Hill Street Blues, and all that shit. You had so much science fiction, right? Buck Rogers, Star Trek, The Next Generation. You could Andrew Dice Clay if you wanted a crazy comedian. If you wanted a crazy comedian but not as dirty, Sam Kinison. David Copperfield if you wanted to have illusion in the Paul Daniels. Stephen Wright was great and dry. I used to think the dictionary was a poem about everything. Just stuff like that. And then even Scandal. Jim Baker, founder of PTL, remember that? Heritage USA in 87. Defrocked for having an affair. Later sent to prison. Jimmy Swaggart was defrocked. Sexual relations with a prostitute. Pretty crazy, right? Animated shows, The Smurfs, Thundercat. You remember? Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, was it? Postman Pat. You had Uncle Floyd, a nut job from Jersey. Pee Wee Herman. You had everything. You had everything. The fashion was incredible. The perm, the mullet, the Jerry curl, the high top fade, big hair, psycho chan cut. You had everything. It started in the late 70s with the heavy metal fashion, really. Ripped jeans, neon clothing, dyed red hair. I didn't have to dye mine. It was red. In fact, someone said to me once, "Where'd you get your hair done?" I said, "I don't know. My father screwed my mother and that was it." Mini skirts. The 80s was aggressive, shiny, colorful. Women emphasized their lips, their eyebrows, their cheeks with makeup, blush, too much, eyeliner, way too much. Headbands, Ray-Ban, Aviator, Top Gun came out, and every guy the next day. It was like going to see Rocky in Brooklyn every night. After the movie, guys came out like this. They were going to be a boxer the next day. Oh, after that, Ray-Ban ran out of sunglasses. Wayfarer glasses, sunglasses, Risky Business and the Blues Brothers were those, and Miami Vice. The Swatch watches. I have my original Swatch watch, and you know what? I have to do this. I'm sorry, I have to do this. I know you probably don't want me to, but I have to do this because I'm an '80s monster. I'll be right back. I'm like an old man. I have a blanket on my hips. Ugh. I want you to see this, or I wouldn't be bothering you with it. I'm still looking, people. I had it put aside. Uh, it means so much to me. So much that I don't know where it is. Every time you want something, it's amazing. Give me one more second, all right? Just humor me, please. It's probably not worth it, but hang out for a minute. Son of a bitch. I can't find it. It's a black 1981 or 82 Swatch, a black Swatch watch that my mother bought me for Christmas. They were like $28. And it broke. It stopped working. And when I brought it to the guy to fix, the guy that does all my batteries and stuff, because I have like 10 watches, he said, it's one piece. You can't fix it. I don't think the back opens up. I still have it. I have it put probably so safe that even I can't steal it from me. But I'd love to show it to you. One day I will. But padded shoulders, double-breasted Emmanuel. Yeah, I had the double-breasted suits. Yeah, I did. Um, I have that look. I could show you a picture. I could show you a picture of what I looked like in the '80s. Pretty scary, but I'll show it to you anyway. I had the DA mullet in the back. I played the '80s game good. I love the '80s. I was an '80s. The problem is I'm still an '80s monster. You would think I'd grow up. I'll find it. You'll like it. But yeah, so much has changed. You can't say what you used to say anymore. Yeah, I have the Rolex. I have two Rolexes. I have the Oyster Perpetual and another one. I have Beatles collector watch, a bunch of watches. I wanna get a, my friend Joe has it. I'm trying to remember what it I don't remember, it's really nice though. I would probably sell one of my Rolexes, but my son would kill me. He wants and they're expensive now. I remember the Rolex I bought first one I ever bought was in 1997. It cost me about 4,500. It's like 8,000 now. And the other one I have is about 14. I think I paid 6 for it. I bought myself when I was a broker. I bought myself a gift. I never bought anything for myself. I always had a nice car, but I didn't, I didn't drink really. I didn't smoke. I didn't spend anything on myself. But you'll probably laugh at these pictures. Yeah, mine's a 97. First one I got. They've gone up a lot. I have a gold one. It's gone up about 800%. I think I paid 6. It's about 22,000 now. I never wear it. It's in the safe deposit box. You know what I wear? Danae, I would say that. Yeah, it was. Not a bad player, Danae. I wasn't, I wasn't disrespectful and stuff. I just, yeah, I was out and about. I wasn't shy. Put it that way. This is about 94. You can see that. Oh, mine are taken care of. I never wear them. This is playing a wedding around 1990, lead singer. This is around 87. But I have a good one that you can see the DA and everything. This was my car, my 300ZX, 1985. Yeah, and I look at the pictures, passport picture. That's when I was going back and forth to London. That was 1990. Just looking for this picture, I look through these pictures and I say, man, you got old. Yeah, here's 89. Nothing wrong with a beautiful woman. To me, all women are beautiful. I know that sounds odd, but to me, each woman has their own essence. Never, I always thought that women, they stand on their own. I always thought that because I've had the privilege of meeting such wonderful women, smart women. Here's me in my shout jacket at the reunion. No, Emmanuel. Yeah, but I met these people because I was in a club, Danae. I was in popular clubs. I bounced, and that's where you meet these people. It wasn't I was nobody. Who the hell am I? I just was nice to them. That was the only reason, Danae. I always treated people nice, and I'd help them in the club, so, they knew me. It's the only reason. I'm nothing special, believe me. If I was me in another life, I'd stay away from me. I'm joking. I'm okay. I just, I know famous people because I traveled in those circles. I had people coming to work and in there and stuff like that. I don't think there are any puppy mills anymore, Patty. Now it's very hard. They don't sell them in New York. It's against the law to buy a puppy in New York. I heard Pennsylvania. You got to be careful. I could find out for you though. I'll find out for you. No, one of the things today that I never treated famous people like they're famous. I think that's why they liked me. I didn't slobber over them. I threw Diana Ross out of the bathroom a child. I could care less who you are. I mean it. I could give a fuck less who you are. It's gotten me in trouble in the past, but oops. And I would tell people right out, I'm not taking any shit. Find some other idiot for that. Yeah, I wasn't put on earth to take shit from everybody. Danae, absolutely right, my dear. Unfortunately, can you imagine like trying to be on 24/7 if you're Jewish 24/6? Can you I had to do it. Can you imagine like be in character 24/7? You kind of lose who you are. How could you remember who you are? So I just am this idiot all the time. So I don't have to remember who I am. I don't try to hurt people, but I'm not going to kiss people's asses. That those days are long gone. Not worth it. Yeah, here's some scary. This is doing a concert in Florida. Let me see. Daytona Beach, 85. I can't find it. But you have to look into 11,000. I'm sorry I wasted your time for the last 3 hours. I got my gas bill today, 515 and over 300. Oh my God. Patty, really? Let me tell you something. You cannot, why does it crack you up, Maria? Yeah, don't let it crack you up. Patty, I had heard that a lot of the Amish that look like ascetics just with better food, they um yeah, they have puppy mills. Danae talking about what? Puppy mills. Imagine if they had people that had, well, they do have people that have babies like puppy mills. They're on social services. That's where I played, Maria. That's where I played in 1985. Eldridge came on with us. El DeBarge, nice guy. He told, I was talking to him. Susie Hoffs was there and Southside Johnny was there. And I said to Eldridge came over and he said, What do you think I have to do not to be Michael Jackson? I said, stop acting like him. Well, Danae, to be totally honest with you, I was a guy that if I went to a wedding and 99 people loved me and one said, he's all right, it would bother me. Now I would say, man, there's something wrong with him. He's outnumbered. Everyone can't be wrong all the time. Uh, I don't try to insult people. Don't get me wrong. I don't do that. But I'm just not kowtowing to your bullshit. Go find some other asshole. I'm not the one. Next. Patty, I told you I will help you. If you want a dog, I will help you. Just let me know when you are able to get one. I will help you get one. I meant it. 87 to 89. Wow. No, Danae, I played Jacksonville, the landing. I played Daytona in 85. I was on a tour. Uh, I played Washington, Baltimore, South Carolina, North Carolina, Athens. Um, on another tour, I played the Marquette commencement out on the grass, the lawn. I played Mothers in Chicago, where About Last Night was filmed. I played in the downstairs Mothers. There's two, one across the street, Bob Larry's place. I played not Kentucky, Indiana, right about an hour and 20, right outside of Chicago. Played Chicago, like I said, Mothers on Rush Street. I played the Syracuse Festival in '83, outdoor festival. The crowds don't bother me. There were about 8,000 Daytona, 5,000, 4,000 on the lawn in Marquette in Wisconsin. It was freezing. I was up there in April. My hands were freezing. I was losing the chord sequence. Yeah, I cannot run for office anymore. First of all, fortunately, I don't have to. I don't have to do this show to pay my rent or throw red meat out and say this content provider is a jerk off, so everybody will watch me and I'll make money. I don't need to do that. I can pay my car bill, have a house. I'm fortunate. That's why I say I'm fortunate. First of all, I worked very hard too. You got to remember, I worked in England. I first had gotten married. I worked in England for a year and a half, and I came back every 3 weeks for 3 days. I worked my ass off. Um, and my kind of Amex card for England is this. That is my Gloucester Sporting Club card where I used to take clients. That was 1991 on Victoria. I think it was Victoria Lane, um, Victoria Casino. That was my. I used to take clients there. I was at the Gloucester Hotel, and then I had a flat on Marlborough Street. Uh, People's opinions can be very jaded, but they also can be very, very, very helpful. Like I'll give you a perfect example. Bad Bunny. Is that the dude's name that did the Super Bowl show and everybody's mad because he didn't speak a word of English? Well, when you go on vacation and you go to another country, you're going to another country that doesn't speak English. Why are you going? Because you want to see their culture. You want to see what it's about. So think of watching Bad Bunny in the same context of going to the Dominican Republic on vacation. You're learning about someone else's culture. There's nothing wrong with that. The problem with today's society is you are waterboarded. If I take this water right? And I'm doing this. If I can open the fucking thing, right? I'm okay. Probably not going to choke. If I open this thing, I should do it as a demonstration to make money on here, but I won't do it. I'm not going to lower myself. And I just waterboard myself. I'm going to start choking. Well, that's what's happening. It's Voyager. That was what was happening in today's climate. They are pushing everything down your throat. They want to make sure that you don't forget about 200 years of inequality, as they say. So they want to fix it all in 3 months. So they're waterboarding you. What do? What does the body do when you take in a bad clam? It expels it. Food poisoning. The body is expelling the poison. Well, that's what's happening. We are getting inundated with, I'm not saying it's bullshit, but we are getting inundated to change in a year, which took 200 years to evolve. It's not happening. Instead of incrementally trying to change, you're forcing everybody to be different tomorrow. Not happening. In fact, people are going to run away from that. And that's what you see happening. Unfortunately, nowadays, if you go by someone's house that has an American flag outside, you think they're a white supremacist. You don't think they're a veteran. That's the culture shift because of the media and because everyone hates each other and they don't even know why they hate each other. Danae, it's funny you said that, my dear, because I said something like that. I said the problem with people is when you look at people, you're looking at yourself. And that may elicit a response that you're not comfortable with. So you run away from it. When I used to move games in Vegas, uh, very early on when I was younger, I'd get in trouble gambling. I admit it until I went on the other side. Uh, if you owed money to a bookmaker on Sunday night, you always envisioned the worst when you had to go Tuesday, say you didn't have the money. It never was as bad as you thought. In fact, you'd walk out saying, "Oh, that was nothing." Nope, what did I? Uh, I would say like, "Wow, it was uncomfortable." Guy didn't say, "Oh, good for you," but nothing happened. Well, Danae, if you're only speaking Spanish though, and you have millions of people watching, um, someone would say something. But he was telling a story. That was a storyboard performance. Everything signified something. Uh, Look, you're always going to hear from a minority. You fucked us for 200 years. You're going to hear that. The problem is when you say, you held me down for 200 years. I did. How's Oprah doing? How much money she have? How did Obama get in the White House if everybody hated him? Do you know that 25% of his votes were white? Yeah, I agree, Patty. Um, I like people. Kamala Harris, people just didn't want to vote for a woman. Hillary Clinton got a million more votes than Donald Trump. The popular vote, she won. Obviously, they didn't want a bad candidate. They didn't care. Hillary was a woman. Well, that's debatable. But she's a woman, and she had the popular vote. So, no, Kamala, it wasn't that people weren't ready for a woman. They weren't ready for you. And don't give me the African American thing because Obama was the president. Johnny Cochran, how did he do? All the judges, doctors, they're not complaining they were held back. If you want to hang out, cut out of school, and get stoned on pot all day, guess what? Your chances of getting a CEO job are probably limited. I agree with you, Danae. Absolutely. Absolutely. The same people that call for Republicans to face the music. I never heard a thing about the Clintons getting arrested for not answering a subpoena. A federal subpoena they ignored. Can you imagine if that were a Republican? Every news channel would be covering it. You didn't hear anything about it on the news. That they out and out refused. Can you imagine if a Republican high ranking refused and didn't show up for a subpoena? Think about it. The news is our worst enemy because they look for headlines. Look, I don't know if you know MobTube on here. All they do is talk about each other. And that's why when I first started out, I had 200 people in my chat. I was mixed up in that. I just said, I don't need this bullshit. I'm not in high school anymore. Well, Danae, they just passed the law in Florida. You can't take the driver's license in any other language but English. Listen, I go to Italy. You think they give a shit what I think? You think if I go to Japan, they're going to change everything because I'm American? No. If I went to Japan or China and protested about the Buddha, they'd find me in jail for 300 fucking years. No, you're in America. If you want to be an American, be American. Don't come here and bring a pocket and want it to be your country because you're leaving your country for a reason. Danae, I know. Danae, you're looking at a guy. Originally, I wanted to be a doctor. My father got sick. I was going to go to medical school. I got an A in organic chemistry. First guy in 6 years that teacher gave an A to. A and P, anatomy and physiology, aced it. I probably dropped Spanish 6 different times. I couldn't do it. And I think I'm okay intelligent-wise. I couldn't do it. I don't know if it's a block. I just couldn't learn Spanish. And I've learned stuff much more uh, meticulous when it comes to the learning structure of the subject. Carbon chains, biology, endoplasmic reticulum, mitochondria. I still know all that stuff. I'm very strong on the sciences and math. And but I couldn't learn a language. But now it's not that I could play guitar, drums, and stuff. So that part of the brain, it must work. I just can't do it. Yeah. English isn't the official language, but I shouldn't have to make someone else's the official language. That's like saying in Italy, Italian's not the language. Italian is the language that the citizens speak. Absolutely, Danae. Absolutely. Look, I am all for infusion, all for it. Okay. When the Statue of Liberty, we will take everybody in and help them, not pay for them and all their kids for 40 years. America wasn't, we welcome you all and we'll pay for you for 5 generations. That's not what it's about. People come here for generations, they live on a check. They have baby after baby, knowing the government's going to pay for it. That's not what America's about. You're land of the free, free to pursue your dream and have a job. How did Trump get in the White House? You do know what he's done, right? His own department would not fake the Epstein files. Danae, I'll tell you this much. That's how bad the other administration was that Trump got in the White House. Think of what you're saying right now. The media was against Trump. Every Hollywood person was against Trump. Every late night host was against Trump. And Trump destroyed her, won every swing state. That's how bad they were. I don't know if she's a piece of shit. I don't know that much about her. Danae, you're very welcome. And this is what I will say. The BLM riots, right? Putting BLM Lives Matter, whatever, in front of the Trump Tower. How come you never put Gay Lives Matter in the Village when people were coming out with bats and bashing gays over their heads? How come gay lives didn't matter? I'm curious. Uh, I'm very fair. I'm a Republican, but I'm very fair. I have liberal tendencies, and will I will tell you this much. Danae, if I used to debate at NYU, I used to debate. I won my debating class. This is my question to you. Not to you, but you could answer. This would be my question. Oprah was so afraid that democracy was going to fail, correct? Beyonce was. Al Sharpton was. I'd say, then why did you charge Kamala on stage to say it? If you were so afraid about democracy falling, why did you charge her to go up and say it? How are you going to answer that? If I'm a multi-billionaire, I could freight my own travel to go to the convention, stand there with Kamala and say, she's the answer, democracy's falling. Why did you charge her to say it? Danae, if you had a family member, and I'm bipolar, and you said, Vin, my family member just got diagnosed. Would you mind just talking to them? I know you've been on medication. I say, sure, Danae, 500. What would you say? Would you think I really cared about you or just was looking to make the buck? Well, every single person on that stage with Kamala Harris that said, beware of Trump, charged her to say it. Yeah, but you see the difference is, Danae, I would hear every one of your arguments. Nowadays, nobody will. No, Danae, no, I love it because you're so fair. I absolutely love it. This is what I would do. If I were going in to a meeting between Putin and Zelensky, I'd walk in like this with my Michael Kors sweatshirt. I'd walk in like this. I'd say, all right, guys, you shut up, Putin, and you shut up and change your clothes because Trump said they weren't good, so I agree. I wouldn't be bending over like this because I'd be afraid. I'd say, number one, with the thumb, it should be this one. Number one, Putin, do you love your family? Yeah? Zelensky, do you love your family? Yeah, okay. Do you want them to be healthy and not get diagnosed with cancer? How about you? Do you want your kids to do well? Do you? I'd go on 6 or 7 things. Then I'd sit down and say, I just gave you 7 things that you are totally in agreement with, which means you're not really so different. So now let's walk in and talk about the things you have in common, not the things that you're different about. That's what I feel. We're always looking at how different people are. How about thinking about how in line we are with each other? No, I agree, Danae. I agree. But oh, we would, Danae. We probably would. But it would always end with, "Oh, listen, I'm hungry. You want to go get something to eat?" I'll. I debated once a college professor, tied him up in knots. No, no, I know. No, you're right. You're right. But the problem is, Danae, that you have people now that are saying you're wrong if you don't agree with them. Not you're different, you're wrong. I remember talking to a sociology professor about reverse racism. There's no reverse racism. I said, no. I said, okay, if I go up to Harlem, the worst neighborhood, now, maybe 1% of the shoppers in your store are of my persuasion. We agree with that? Why do you have bulletproof glass? Your ethnicity, your neighbors are shopping in your store. So why do you have bulletproof glass? Is that reverse racism? Are you telling me you don't trust your neighborhood, which is predominantly your ethnicity? Tied them up in knots. That would end of that debate. Oh, I would love to debate people. This that they haven't all been criminals. That's not. Yeah, Danae, I think we have been programmed. You know what the problem is? Can I tell you what the problem is, Danae? The problem is when LBJ said to African American women, you can have all the babies you want. We'll pay for it. You just can't get married. And my debate would be this. Under Donald Trump in 2017, more African American men worked than at any time in 50 years. How were out of 71% of African American women who are daddyless in the home, how are 90% of them on welfare? Think about it. If the African American men are working more now, why would you still be on welfare? I'll tell you why. Because those men are living with the women who have the apartment for nothing. They're not going to pay rent. Honestly, I wouldn't either. If I came out of college today And I came out of high school, college with maybe $11,000 in student loan debt. Things are cheap, but NYU was 4,000 when I went. Uh, and I could vote for a guy that was going to stop my student loans. I'd vote for him too. I'm being honest with you. I would vote for him too. There's nothing wrong with that. You don't, Vinny. You've been programmed to think that you do, and that's in which way? Oh, I don't think all Spanish are criminals. I don't. Not at all. Not at all. I agree. No one in this country illegally without any sort of documentation should be removed. Oh, you don't think that they should be removed? Yeah, it's a hard thing. Danae, I'll tell you. I try to look at things fairly. If I had next door neighbors, I'm not going to ask them, "Could I see your green card or whatever?" If they knew my son for 7, 8 years, right? And I found out that they were removed, I would be very upset. And I would say, "They don't do anything. He works hard." But with that, right, it's always been tolerated. But to American-born citizens on welfare. Okay, Danae. Well, if you had children, if you had children and your resources were such where you really couldn't feed everyone, do you think it's fair to take out of your children's mouths to feed people that aren't? No, I agree. It's a terrible thing. It's a terrible thing, Danae. But when I heard that illegal, undocumented, whatever you want to call them, were being flown into hotels and given food vouchers and everything, and you have veterans under the sidewalk, under the bridge, I got a problem with that. Uh, I don't think they're all fake. I think that there's more to it. I agree with you. I think they're all too. There's more to it. There's always going. It's like funny when they talk about Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. They always had problems with counting. Why? We send people to the moon. We can't solve that. We solve what we want to solve. Like it's a big joke. Oh, Pennsylvania always had problem with the voting and legally. Why? That's how you do. You laugh it off. You can't solve it. Danae, I could end this question for you perfectly. If Maria says something about you, the way you commented, and I agree with her, that doesn't mean we're both conspiring against you. It means I happen to agree with her. Oh, I have no idea, Emmanuel. No, I know that, Danae. But why isn't that looked into equally? No, I agree with you, Danae. You have great points here. I love this discussion because it's nice to talk to someone who sees both ways. Yeah, there are plenty of things that I think are disgusting. Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure. I totally agree with you there. Usually does protest too much. I totally agree with you. Um, if you hate someone, it's because something is hitting very close to home. Danae, that's going up there. Something close to home. I think that, well, Danae, that's the only choice I have right now. Only choice I have. Um, Look, I teach. Where I teach, it's 95% Democrat, liberal. I've had discussions with the person that assists me in the class. He's a former Princeton graduate attorney, very, very nice guy. Um, Everyone is screaming, I hate Trump. How did he win the popular vote? I'll tell you why. Because I was there, I saw it. Because people are full of shit. They're afraid they'll get canceled. So they go along, I hate him. And then in the booth, Trump. They're afraid. If I have to be afraid to tell you that I'm voting Republican, that's censorship. Where is freedom of speech when I have to be afraid if I don't want to put a BLM poster in my room that you're going to fire me? Where is that freedom of speech? Zuckerberg already came out on Facebook and said they censored Trump people. He said it. Today, yes, yes, very good point. Absolutely. Obama did nothing for the black people. Absolutely nothing. That's my problem. 90% of African Americans will come out to vote just because the guy's African American. They won't give a shit what he stands for. They won't give a shit about. They don't even know how to spell his name right. Oh, he's black. Yeah, that's not right. And I'll tell you why I know it's not the same way. Because when Obama got in, do you know how many white people voted for him? Think about it. Obama could not have gotten in because African Americans and minorities do not supersede the white vote. That means that plenty of white people voted for Obama. And they tell you stuff that doesn't make sense. How could a woman say they weren't ready for a woman when when Hillary Clinton beat Trump in the popular vote? Yeah, they just weren't ready for you because you were a moron. The woman couldn't finish a sentence. She cackled. Her problem was she should have detached herself from Joe Biden a year before. She should have detached, and she did. You never saw them together. They tried to detach her from him. Cross saw the massive acres of land that was unpopulated. Every time I say something about Trump, people start talking about Kamala. That's your programming. It has to be one way or another. It doesn't, Danae. Absolutely. Let me ask you a question. Did you ever see any of the media not Kamala? Simple question. Did you ever hear any any of the media? I'll give you a perfect example today, and I really am curious of what you think. And it doesn't have to be one way or another, but it can't be only one way. Donald Trump can't, after West Point shaking 500 hands, putting his hands to his side, and all they talked about was there must be something wrong with him. Joe Biden, the same day, couldn't finish a sentence and went the wrong way off the stage. Nothing. How would you answer that today? Is that the media being fair? No, Danae, you're right. It doesn't have to be one way or another. But in that same sentence, it can't be one way. So what do you think of that, Danae? Because I do respect your opinion. Do you believe that the media treated them both the same? The media never once said Joe Biden's failing. He's mumbling. He can't finish a sentence. Why? Why wouldn't they report that? I'll tell you why. Because the media is owned by liberal outs and they don't want Trump in. Now, true, I think Trump caused a lot of his own problems. Trump's got a big effing mouth. He makes it very easy for you to hate his guts. I totally admit. No, I agree. But what did you think of my comment? Do you think that Trump was covered fairly? Or was Joe Biden kind of nursed along by the media like nothing was wrong? I'm curious what you think of that because that is a lot of what's going on now. They hated him so much. Of course, they're biased, Emmanuel. That's all I'm asking today. Do you think that Joe Biden was covered for? And if he was, there's something wrong. No, I agree today, but I'm curious what I asked you. Do you think that Biden was covered the same way? Humanity has left the building a long time ago, didn't I? I agree with you. Well, I see you don't want to answer that question, so I'll answer it for you. Uh, yeah, do I think Donald Trump was a total scumbag for saying Joe Biden can't finish? Absolutely. Absolutely. But let me tell you something. If the media didn't continually ignore it, let me ask you a question. Where was ICE Trump's first term? When did ICE appear? How many people did Joe Biden let in? Why the first term wasn't there any ICE in the streets? I agree with you, Danae, but I just wanted you to answer my question. 'Cause any question you ask me, you see, I'll answer you. Do you think Joe Biden was sheltered? Because if he was, the media should all be called out. That's not their job. Their job is not to elect somebody. Their job is to report to us fairly. They even went as far as to manipulate her video, Kamala, because she sounded like an idiot. Everyone. Probably, Emmanuel. I no, I agree with that. And like Danae said, I see Danae's not gonna answer my question, but that's okay. I love you anyway. Uh, I think that Trump is a total douchebag. I admit it. Total douchebag. But Danae, I'm gonna let you in on the way I beat the economist debating him. Do you want to hear it? Everyone just press one if you want to hear it. How I beat the economist when the economist said, well, as long as Joe Biden had good people around him, it didn't matter. Do you want to hear the answer? Press one. Does that mean you dislike me, Danae? Does that mean you dislike me, Danae, after all this time we spent with each other with the shorts and the music and all that? I even learned how to say your name right, for God's sakes. I used to say Denis. I used to say, yeah, this one's for Denis. And she was so nice. She said, actually, it's kind of like Renee. No, I agree with a lot of what you're saying today. I do. Do you want to hear, Danae, how I beat the so-called sociology professor? And it'll be me and you talking, Danae, and everyone can listen to it because you just said you like to debate. And if it's your specialty, great, because it is mine too. This is the example, Danae, when someone told me, well, I knew Joe Biden was failing, but long as he has good people around him, this is my question. Danae, if you followed my work and you thought I was a brilliant investor and you gave me all of your 401k to invest, and you found out 2 years later that I gave it to my son to, I trust me, I gave it to my son to run, you would say, whoa, 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 Ben, I gave my money to you. I put my vote in you. Exactly. You voted for Joe Biden, not Jill Biden, not Schumer, Joe. So those of you who had no problem with that scenario, send me your 401k money. I'll let someone invest it for you. And when you come to me, when you lost it, I'll say, well, look. And just to show you that I know what I'm talking about, so I'm not just talking with a YouTube channel. This was me when I worked. I know what I'm talking about. I don't know if you could see it, but at 28, I was a VP of global sales for JP Morgan Chase. You can Google me. I know what I'm talking about. Financially, I know what I'm talking about. And you would not be very happy if you voted me to handle your retirement. And I don't think anybody's going to attack us because I'm bestowed with that responsibility. And if I told you, I gave it to them, I trust them, you'd say, wait, Ben, I gave you my money. Where do you come off not telling me the media didn't tell you? That's my problem. My problem is Kamala Harris went on 60 Minutes saying there was no border crisis when she never even went there. And we found out there was a big one. You know how I know? Because 13 million people came in. Now, do I think it's unfair that you have 7 women killed by illegals and that's the whole narrative? I do, because it's a small percentage. But Danae, if I break into your house and fall down the steps during the robbery and cripple myself, should I be able to sue you when you lose your house because of the insurance when I was not there legally? How would you feel if you lost your house because you had to pay me $10 million dollars when I was in your house breaking the law? You'd have a problem with it. I totally agree today. I was in the financial side, worked in England as a 30-year-old. I know. I have a master's in finance from NYU. I know. But the problem is, Danae, they only talk about one side. Imar's worth $125 million. Her highest salary was 180,000. How? Pelosi's husband, 150 million. How? No one asks. They care about Donald Trump's real estate deal when he was a civilian. While in office, these people made millions and millions. The question's never asked. And that's why they go nuts. Oh, I would hope you wouldn't be on welfare because I would be one of the first ones to do a benefit for you on here. Well, oh, Danae, I thought you were from the other camp. Now, I will tell you this much. This is one of the nicest things I've seen. Oh, that's okay, Danae. Um, I love Danae, people. I love Maria too. Those are Vinny's angels. Uh, I'll tell you this much. I live on a highway here, not a highway. I live on like a what's it called? An artery, whatever, a thoroughfare, a thorough, whatever it's called. I'm about a mile from the LIE, Long Island Expressway, that either goes west to New York or east toward Long Island. There's I don't know if she's Mexican or I'm not sure, little baby on her back. I always buy a bottle of water from her. She sells the water and the pineapple stuff. And at Christmas, I give her a $20 bill. Don't ask for the change. I said, because she has the little kid on a Santa suit. I said, make sure you buy him something. And then she said, Mister, this is what I got him. She's so nice. I agree with you. Everyone should be given health. I agree with that today. Absolutely. Uh, Well, I don't support them, but I'll tell you something which will show you that I'm kind of liberal as well. I get a water from her all the time. This time, she must have had her older kid with her that was about 4, because she has a little baby that used to be during Christmas time. He didn't grow up that much in a year. Um, so I bought her water because it was kind of rush hour. To go to my friend Mitch's house is either 15 minutes, no traffic, or an hour with traffic. So I don't take the chance. I buy the bottle of water. So what happened was she ran out at the red light, and it's like 3 or 4 lanes to give someone water in front of me. A couple of cars in front of me. I was waiting, like, "Come on, get here," because the light was gonna turn. She runs because the light's turning to get out of the street, and she falls. The 4-year-old or 5-year-old runs after her. I went to get out of the car to go grab the kid to get him out of there, and someone beat me to it. I don't know why I did this. Maybe like Danae said, I'm programmed. It was a Chinese guy. I was white, Caucasian, another Caucasian, maybe another. There was an African American guy that I know from the neighborhood. Wonderful, wonderful guy. And I said to myself, at that moment, no one asked her, "Are you here legally?" We cared because we were human beings. I've worked in a soup kitchen, didn't I? I got 3 years ago. I gave my time for about four different days. I did it 4 hours a day. I know, I know. Uh, no one cared. And honestly, I've never had a conversation with this woman because she doesn't really speak English. I don't think she does. But if I was an agent, I'd say, "You got 10 seconds, get out of here." I wouldn't arrest her. Well, thank you, Maria. I try to be fair. It would really bother me if the father who works every day, who's here illegally, they busted down his door. It would really bother me. And honestly, if it was my next door neighbor that I knew, I'd hide him. I'd take the charge. I got the money for a good lawyer. I'd get out of it. I would help. But then, as soon as you think that, you see the stupid post with a picture of the woman who got killed and the guy that just got caught 3 times DWI who was in this country and never went back. And then it kills you. And you say, fuck that. That's what happens. And Danae, you're absolutely right. They make you believe they want us to hate each other, divide and conquer. Oh, you're 35 today? Good. I went to Catholic school till I was, I'm a recovering Catholic. I went to Catholic school till I was my fifth grade. We moved. You know what the problem is, Danae? People are pigs. Go to a buffet when they put the Alaskan king crab out. If you're not third online, it's all gone. People don't give a shit who's behind them. They'll take 30 of them. They'll pile it up like 18-inch snowstorm. They don't give a shit about you. If you start taking care of everybody, it's not going to work. Look at Mamdani. You think this buyer's remorse already with him? Mamdani has told you he hates business people. He just went out. They had a guy went after a cop with a knife. They shot him, and he's defending the criminal. Yeah, it's terrible when a young person gets killed. He's trying to kill a cop. What do you want? This is the problem, all my friends out there. Socialism doesn't work. It doesn't work, people. I studied it in graduate school. It doesn't work. It can't work. It's not designed to work. It's not designed to work. Uh, the problem is, to dummy it down for myself here, people believe in it. Most of the people that believe in socialism don't have anything. And even victims of socialism defend it. The core message that every generation that I would, if I was standing on a podium teaching right now, you can't print prosperity. You cannot do it. Legislate motivation or equalize outcomes without destroying freedom. This is what I would tell a class right now. When everybody owns something, nobody owns it. And if nobody has direct interest in it, in maintaining or improving it, it breaks down. If you don't give a shit about your neighbor's roof that's leaking after the heavy snowstorm or two when the roof caves in, if you had an interest in that and he was kicking back some money for the renters to you because you're a nice guy, you'd see how fast you would have had that roof fixed. That's why buildings in the Soviet Union, it's like public housing in the United States. They look decrepit within a year because of their construction. When machines in government factories break down and they're continuously in need of repair, they're not repaired. Every generation, people, rediscovers socialism, and every generation has to relearn why it doesn't work. Um, the word itself is noble, I think, right? It promises fairness, equality, big buzzword now in our society, moral renewal. We're morally renewed. We have a sense of, well, that's what we're supposed to be. But behind all the rhetoric lies a reoccurring truth. Socialism doesn't fail because of bad luck or bad leaders. It fails because it collides with human nature and my major, arithmetic. Okay. Now, when people started with socialism, they believed they had solved a problem of the ages, right? By transferring ownership, the means of production to the people, humanity could supposedly achieve equality and harmony. Right? Everybody's going to be in on the cake. Everyone gets a piece. After a while, though, if you're not paying the guy that makes the cake, why should he lay out all his money to make a cake that you're going to eat? Modern advocates of democratic socialism make a similar appeal. They say that justice requires redistributing wealth and equalizing outcomes. So the moral impulse, to me at least, behind the ideal is fundamental. Remember, I'm a math guy. People want fairness and dignity. Those are wonderful attributes. But the system, the logic undermines itself. I'll tell you how. When everyone receives the same reward, participation trophies, why should you have to work hard? Why work? If I come in 18th, I don't have to be number one in the class to get a scholarship. If everyone got a scholarship, you'd be out playing basketball at night and at concerts, not studying for your exam tomorrow morning. So people don't stop working out of laziness. They stop because it doesn't matter anymore if they work. Once you guarantee outcome, energy shifts from production to entitlement. I have a friend, I won't say who he is, that the daughter says, your generation left us with shit. That's why we can't. I felt like taking this kid to the medical school and say, look who's graduating. I guess we didn't hurt them. The connection between effort and reward exists way beyond economics. And that's what I taught in college. It involves fairness and morality. Historical evidence from socialists and the systems that they work with repeatedly demonstrate that when individuals are not directly rewarded for their work, productivity declines. If your boss, you ever know if your boss is sitting in the office, I bet you 50% of the work that needed to be done gets done, and you're probably ahead of schedule. When the boss, you're not shuffling papers if he's not there, and you're talking to your friend at the water cooler about the Super Bowl. Uh, Productivity declines, creativity diminishes. If I have a good idea and I'm not going to get a raise for it, screw you. I'm not going to think. The attempt to create equality really ends up making everybody poorer. Because when the engine stops turning, it's not about earning money. It's about pride, freedom to improve your own life. Competition and personal ownership aren't enemies of justice. They're engines of progress. Think about it. When socialism removes all competition, it eliminates the engine. Stagnation. Why should someone go to medical school to be a doctor when a sanitation worker is making $20,000 less a year? Factories are slow, markets are empty. The buffet table. If you have stores that give out food, they're going to be stocked for 3 hours. And then they will be unstocked because you won't be able to keep up with the flow of people and their wants. You know, people are pigs. They'll take 8 gallons of milk. They don't even drink milk. Go look at a snowstorm forecast. How much milk do you need? What do you think? It's going to snow for like Noah's Ark? Generosity turns into dependency. And another D word, which I use teaching, despair. Moral fatigue of equality. It's like moral fatigue is like giving super chats on the YouTube channel. They become donator fatigue. After a while, $10 becomes 5, 5 becomes 2, and 2 becomes nothing. But you get fatigued of giving money when you have other things to do. When generosity turns into dependency, it'll turn into despair, because it's the moral fatigue of the matter is when everything is equalized, ambition dies. It's like, I can't do anything. I can't save it. So why try? Now, once productivity falls, socialist economists, social economists, theoretical numbers crunchers, they face a hard limit. There's not enough wealth to fulfill the promises. Since Mamdani got in, you see, he raised the fare. What's free so far? The government, which once had a job to be the executive branch of America, becomes a printing press. They become Minutemen printing. The difference is they're not printing brochures, they're printing money. Now, at first, the new money feels like a painless solution, right? Wages rise on paper, they rise. Benefits expand. I used to tell people all the time, and they said, "Oh my God, the market went down. My house is worth 40,000 less." I said, "Really?" I said, "Well, are you moving?" "No." "Then shut up. What's the difference on paper if your house is worth $40,000 less when you're going to live there 50 years? Does it matter? What the hell's the difference?" Officials' boost of stimulating demand, but without real production behind the currency, what happens? Prices surge. Mamdani's store. Everyone will fleece it. There'll be nothing left. So without real production, what happens when nothing's left? People have to go to the real store, the C-Town, spend the exorbitant prices, and now you're making them just as poor as they were. And few will benefit by the free store. Inflation becomes invisible tax. You may think you're paying 8 and change percent, becomes 10 or 11. It steals the value of everybody's labor and every savings account. You're punishing the poor most of all. And that's what socialism was geared for. The poor, wasn't it? Equality. How are you going to make things equal if you're punishing the poor even more? You can't redistribute what you haven't created. Printing money is not a creation. It's theft from the future. If you keep on taking out of your 401k, you're living great now, but you're depriving yourself if you happen to get to the great age of 80. History has repeated this lesson from Weimar Germany, Soviet Union, modern Venezuela. Inflation is the slow motion collapse of a socialist dream. And people fight me on this, but I know what I'm talking about. Absolutely. I love you too, Danae. I truly do. I'm sending you, email me, lovethehits@gmail.com. I'm going to send you my phone number. Yeah, Manuel. I taught this stuff in school. I taught this. Now, you have what's called an inflation trap. What that is basically, socialist economies face a hard limit. There's not enough wealth to fulfill the promises. So you look at it, if socialism fails so consistently, why does it always return? Why is it that gnat at a picnic that once you sprayed, you see another one? Because it appeals to our moral imagination. It sounds righteous to say that no one should go hungry or live in poverty. Ah, I must be a good guy. Good. So me screwing my gumad, I'm a good guy. Who cares about that? Its emotional power is immense. It makes you feel like you're doing something right on their dime. You're not doing anything. Oh, I vote for it. Donald Trump lowered the taxes. I'm part of that. I voted for him. I didn't do anything. Modern advocates often rebrand the idea, calling it democratic socialism, because socialism is a scary word. Equity economics, the Scandinavian models. It works in Scandinavia, but there are things I could tell you about Scandinavia that you say, oh, really? Even the Nordic nations have rejected socialist label. They rely on market economies to generate the wealth that funds their welfare systems. Their prosperity demands on capitalism. Socialism, it survives not because it works, but because the promise is so compelling, you can't abandon it. It's why do you spend $50 a week on lottery? You know why you do? Someone wins. I always see it on the board. Maybe that could be me. You know you're not going to. But that promise of hope. Each generation forgets the lessons of the last generation. When people die off, ground zero. Oh, it sounds good because they weren't there for the fallout. Socialism kills incentive. When the effort and reward disconnect, the productivity and the creativity collapse. Socialism fuels inflation. To sustain its promise, government has to print the money. They destroy the currency and the savings of who? The working class, because the poor don't have any savings. And the rich and ultra rich aren't going to be affected either way. You could charge $100 a gallon for milk to a multimillionaire, and he is not going to, or she is not going to drink one less spoonful. Socialism centralizes power. Once the state controls wealth, it controls everything. Enterprise speech eventually through itself. Freedom and prosperity demand decentralizing power, allowing people to own, build, and retain what they create. Despite this promise, though, politicians, professors, elitists, media, it's impossible to lift people out of poverty by spreading more wealth around thinly. You can never do enough of it. So the desire for justice, look, people, I'm all for it. And that's why socialism never disappears. The lottery ticket, the promise that you can be because you tell me that someone wins. But compassion that is divorced from reality leads to catastrophe. That was a catchphrase in one of my papers I did. You can't print prosperity. You can't legislate motivation. I can't pass a law that you have to feel good today. I can't prove it. You can't promise equity without first creating abundance. You cannot create abundance because you're printing monopoly money. So the whole paradox at the heart of socialism, and I used to teach this, is a system that tries to eliminate the desire to work will eventually run out of workers. It always starts with a moral promise: fairness, equity, compassion. The three words that absolve you from being a jerk off, and I'm good because I like that. So many criminals go to church on a Sunday. They feel, well, I must be a good person. They snow themselves. The fairness and the equality, equity, and the compassion at every attempt ends the same way. Empty shelves like Mamdani's beautiful thought of stores, worthless money, and lost freedom. You can go as far as the Soviet farms to modern Venezuela, and now New York City. And the pattern will never change. People will be a little more compelling in their arguments. And even when socialism collapses, when stores' shelves are bare and the currency means nothing anymore and freedom is a memory, many still defend it, conditioned to believe, like Dene said, we are conditioned to believe that the collective is virtuous. They cling to it like hostages who have learned to love the captor. Patty Hearst, remember her in the early 70s? The liberation ended up being one of them. It's the largest commercial for Stockholm syndrome that you could ever put out there. A belief that surrendering individuality is a moral good, and even as a privileged elite thrives from and above the rest. Socialism's cruelest achievement, people, persuading its victims that their suffering is proof of them being virtuous. It's not. It's not. It goes far from solving any problems, and no one ever learns. It's like going to the racetrack every day, losing every day, and still thinking you're going to win tomorrow. The political system, the economic system, you cannot win with socialism. The prolonged shortages you'd have with the food and the medicine, hyperinflation, collapse of essential industries, widespread poverty. You're going to make it worse for people that have it worse. State ownership does not work. It does not work. Governance practices and strict ideological purity is not the recipe that you put in your tuna noodle casserole. So it's, wow, this is different. Not going to work. Eastern Europe, Asia, later Africa adopted models, believing they could rebuild it faster and tweak it enough. Hybrid. The Soviet Union, with their victory against Nazi Germany, inspired many countries to align with socialism. They viewed it as a path to independence from Western dominance. And you can understand that it would. Land reforms, naturalization of industries, promising universal wealth and welfare became common. But rapid adaptation doesn't mean that it's going to work. The Cold War, if you remember, and it's been a while, faced socialist countries to align politically with either the Soviet Union or China. So you had a limited independence in governance, and that's a problem because pretty much when socialist nations became battlefields for ideological competition, heavy militarization and resource allocation to defense rather than public welfare, US led sanctions and embargoes because of economic pressures. Soviet and Chinese aid created dependency instead of sustainability. You couldn't do it. Movements gained a lot of traction back then, colonialism and feudalism, but no one really knew the meanings. They voted because you voted. The bureaucratic inefficiency slows down decision making. You're not thinking on your feet anymore. If you're trying to industrialize quickly, you're going to usually ignore agriculture. Black markets will thrive because you can't get anything on the free shelves. So I'll give you a perfect example. COVID. Hand sanitizer, which was 99 cents in the store, was $10 a bottle. Why? The shelves were empty. The Soviet Union failed because the central planning caused stagnation beyond their wildest dreams. And political repression, what does that? It destroys adaptability. Mostly in an economy, you know, paid in rapid industrialization, there's always corruption where the money is, especially when the money is being handled by one group. So that's why it's not an answer. And New York is going to find that out. No, I agree. It is all a game, Danae. It's like WWE. I agree with you. I don't think half of them hate each other like they say they do. You really didn't find a difference today? No, I did. There was definitely a difference. It might not have been as much as I think, but there was definitely a difference. You're right, Danae. They always hated him. If he cured cancer, they'd say that they bought it. They hated him. He's not a very likable guy. But I do agree with you. It is a game. And I don't believe most of them hate each other. Listen, he was at Hillary's daughter's wedding, Donald Trump. You know what the funniest thing that I saw, Danae? That he was saying, I like Bill Clinton. We get along. He was destroying his wife. And Bill's laughing. He was having jokes at a funeral with Obama. Obama knocked Harris when she walked in, sitting, talking, laughing it up with Donald. Didn't look like they hated each other. Danae, you want to know a secret? Press 1, you have 10 seconds. Oh, I'll have to do that. Thank you, Danae. They all do suck. I'm looking at it now. You adore me. Wow. But you too have that programming still and it's become identity. Yeah, Maria, you're right. I didn't see the scroll here. I'm way behind for some reason. That's probably true. We are. Thank you, first of all, for saying young man. That makes me feel this whole show is worth hearing that. Um, it is all a game. Look, I don't know if he's a pedophile. The thing that Danae, the Biden administration, they tried to get him from real estate deals for 30 years. If they had something on him, it would have came out. I'm not saying he's not. I'm saying they evidently don't have enough. Or, which people don't want to realize, I'm going to feel so bad when you see, oh my God, I can imagine. I don't see the other ones. The only thing I think maybe is there are people on that list that they don't want out. There is no way Bill and Hillary weren't complicit. No possible way. This guy got a blowjob in the middle of the White House. There's no way he believed on that. He was good on that island. The kid was 22 that he did it with in the White House. I'm sure Bill, look, we know already. We've heard conjecture from people that Donald Trump has done this stuff. We know that Bill has. We have evidence that Bill has. No, I agree with you. I think it is an illusion. I think it is. And now, do you want? I don't feel bad for what I don't feel bad what you wrote. No, I value you, Danae. Uh, press one if you want to know the real answer, Danae. I'll tell you why. I'm looking. No, we have been divided on purpose. I totally agree with you. But if it's true, look at the welfare and the fraud in Minnesota. That's not being covered correctly. Um, I will tell you this much, Danae. If you had me, and you see, I'm a fairly intelligent guy. If you had me on a board and you said, Vincent, why do you think the truth hasn't really come out with the Epstein files? I would probably say to you, it's not so much that Donald Trump was innocent. He may very well be guilty. It's because Bill is guilty. I think you'll hear that Hillary was with women. Absolutely. I absolutely think that Hillary was with women on that island. Um, I think that it will take down most of Washington. Think about it. They went after Donald Trump with everything. Why didn't the Biden administration go after him with the Epstein files? They could have released it any time in 4 years. There are too many names. You probably have judges. You're going to cause a problem with England because already you've seen that one of the English other countries, you'll cause an internal war because you're going to out some very top political figures in other countries as well. I'm not seeing it. This is the last comment I see. You're not at the most recent comments. I must be behind. You know what? I don't know how far I'm behind. Maybe I had the setting on like 10 minutes or something. But no, but no, I respect your opinion. I truly do. Danae, if you and I had dinner, it would be a wonderful conversation because I see that you care. Now, I'll tell you, James Woods is a big Republican. Rob Reiner Well, he's in Hollywood. Hollywood is not Democrat. Hollywood is far left. But I don't doubt that Rob Reiner loved America. I don't doubt that he tried to be as patriotic as he could. He really believed what he believed. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I do believe there's much more to it with that Epstein file. I will tell you that most of the people that are insisting it gets released are not on it. Danae, you see how they tried to hang Trump. Why wasn't it? They could have destroyed his. If they released it during the election, they could have destroyed him. Why didn't they? Because a lot of them are on it. And I guarantee you the ringleader's Bill. Bill was inappropriate in the White House with his daughter and his wife living there with a 22-year-old. Chances are that Bill did a lot. And I think Hillary did. And not that it makes it look, if you're with women, if you're a woman, that God bless you, that's your lifestyle. But I think there's probably judges, dignitaries of other countries that you're going to start a big shit show. Where do you come off outing me? They're going to hate the US because of it. There's so much more to this. So much more to it. But I do agree, Danae. I think a lot of it's theater. Unfortunately, it's not good theater, but it's theater. And it's something that, unfortunately, now as Americans, we have to put up with. But anyway, thank you all for. I'm sorry I kept you on 2 hours and 16 minutes, 2 hours and 17 minutes. Danae, Maria, Vinny's Angels, thank you for always being there for me. It means a lot to me. It truly does. And I never get insulted when people are being honest on here with me. Because that's one of the things about my channel that I think separates me from other channels that are much more successful. That I don't have to blow smoke up your ass or be afraid of hurting you so I don't get my super chat. I can be me. I don't have to sell out for a hit record. And I'm glad that you can come in here and be who you want to be, because I would never discourage that. You would never get blocked for telling me, Ben, you're being an asshole today. Because there's a very good chance I am. And at least you'd reel me in. And I respect you for it. So thank you so much for always being there for me. And I'm not going to feel bad. I'm going to feel that I have a true friend that tells me the truth, Danae. And that's much more important to me than any of the other nonsense that goes on in my little neck of the woods. I'm just trying to find what you would. I'm just trying to find. That's great. We are all mirrors for each other. Danae, I love it. Danae and Maria, I am, and Emmanuel, you guys are all getting music shorts dedicated to you tonight. God bless you guys. Thank you for always being there for me. I really appreciate it. You made me feel so good today. You did. I'll talk to you soon. Ladies.